you're just joining us now, this is the gardening series where we're talking all about what to plant, when to plant it, where to plant it, and today's topic, which is why to plant it. And then coming up next week, we'll be talking about how to plant it, because that is perfect for our gardening season that is just starting. So I'll be showing you seeds starting indoors as well as direct seeding some seeds outdoors. So stay tuned for that. But today is all about why we garden. Now you're probably thinking, I garden because I want to grow some food. And I know, I used to think that as well. And there's nothing wrong with that. It is the right thought, but it's just the start of it. Let me tell you that gardening is actually so easy. You'll see, once you get started, if you're just a beginning gardener and you put a seed in the soil, they know what to do and they'll pretty much do the things on their own as long as they've got soil, light, and water. Your hand is not too much involved. Although there's much to be said about gardening and structures and a lot of resources and information that can make your gardening better per se, but gardening in itself, planting seeds and growing food or flowers, is actually very simple. That is why we're talking about why we garden today, because the hardest part about gardening is actually taking that food, taking those flowers, and processing it. I used to think that, wow, I'm going to be growing all this food, and my goal was just to be able to grow the food. I didn't even think that it would be possible that I would be growing a pumpkin or a zucchini or a cucumber or even a pepper. That to me was, wow, only experts can do that. And there may be some truth to that because, you know, some elements in your area may change the climate or the soil conditions, and sure, there's lots of parts that come to play in actually growing food successfully. But to the point, the biggest part I want to encourage you to think about is you are probably going to be able to grow those things. So hear it from me. You're most likely going to have peppers if you plant peppers. And you are most likely going to have a ton of potatoes if you grow potatoes. Hear it from me. It's like I needed somebody to tell me, you're going to grow those things, so be ready for it. Because when I was putting the seeds in the ground, if I'm honest, I was just hoping that I would have product to show at the end of the season. And then when the product was there, I couldn't believe my eyes and was totally not prepared to process it, and we couldn't really eat all of it, and so we were giving away a lot of it, which is fine also. But if you're going to be doing all of this gardening plan so that you are ready for food to stock your pantry and feed yourself through all the seasons, you really want to be thinking about how to put that food up, use it in meals, actually use it when it is ready, and kind of stagger your harvest so that you don't end up with a whole bunch of food coming into your house at once that you're not really ready to receive. So let me tell you how I plan to do this season. Now, with all the planning that we've done this far, we have planned what we're going to be growing. So I have a list of food that I know is going to be coming into my house, as well as a list of flowers that I know is most likely going to be growing in my garden this year. So I can think about bouquet arrangements, and I can also think about recipes that I'm going to be using that food up for. Ways that I can freeze it, ways that I can it, ways that I can ferment it, whatever the case may be. I'm thinking about those things right now so that I'm ready for when it is ready. So you're going to be using the list of food that you plan to grow, as well as the list of maturity dates that you've got recorded. So in former videos, remember that we talked about making that list and jotting beside the things you're growing how long roughly that crop will take to mature. That allows you to have a rough estimate of when you're going to be starting that crop, a rough idea of how many days it takes to mature, and then a final maturity day range. Now, how I'm keeping track of that is I opened up a document on my computer. I noted my list of foods that I'm going to be growing this year, and underneath each item I'm including the date that I'm going to be planting that crop, as well as the date that I expect that crop to be ready. And in brackets I'm putting the days that I expect that crop to take roughly to mature. So let me show you an example of what that looks like right here on my document. Let's take turnips. I know that turnips take 40 to 50 days roughly to mature. Based on my planting guide that I printed from almanac.com, I can see that it is the right time for me to be planting turnips outside directly into the garden around the 30th of March. They're a cold-loving crop, they'll do well outside when it's still kind of colder temperatures, And so 30 March is my start date. And I count it roughly 40 days from then, and I know that I can be expecting turnips to be ready roughly around the first week of May. Now why this is so helpful is because I can expect that in the beginning of May, I should be ready for turnips. I should have recipes ready of how I plan to use that in my meals, especially if it's a crop that you're not used to cooking with. You know, a lot of that spring crops that we're able to plant out in the garden are very exciting because, you know, not a lot of things can grow around then. So of course we're trying turnips and radishes and kohlrabis. But if you've never cooked with that before and you have no idea what to use it for, sure, you can wait until it's ready and give it a try. But most likely a lot of it is going to go to waste because you're just not used to using this, or you have no idea how to even cook it. So do that research now while you're waiting. You know, this season isn't hustling and bustling yet, so I'm all for planning while you've got the time. Another reason why this is so good is because I can now see with the rest of my crops what else is going to be ready in the first week of May. Because then I'll know, whoa, I need to be ready for a bunch of turnips, I need to be ready for carrots, I need to be ready for this and that. And that'll help you not plant too much, which is kind of where I found myself in past gardening seasons. I would dedicate a whole space in my garden bed for, let's say, heaps of carrots. But then they were all ready at a certain time with a bunch of other crops that we enjoy eating, and we didn't even need that many carrots. Now luckily with carrots, you can leave them in the ground and, you know, pick them as you want as the season progresses, so there's really no rush in using it, but you may as well use your garden space for food that you are ready for and to put it up and use it in your kitchen for actually feeding your family. So this is super helpful. It does take some time, but it is so worth it. I'm even thinking that it is worthwhile to get a binder where I have these little tabs in alphabetical order of my crops and print recipes that are ready so that by the time I see a turnip and my mind is just filled with all the stuff that I gotta be doing to keep up with the garden and all the other plates that are spinning in our house and work and family and travels, I can just say turnip, flip to my binder and look through recipes that I've already prepared that we would use that crop for, like caramelized turnips in the oven. Just a quick little dinner idea. So I really encourage you to do this. I kept saying to family and friends that this was the year that I was going to be using the stuff that we're growing in the garden and actually being ready to use it in meals and not just be surprised by it when it arrives. And sure, you would gain this knowledge over years of gardening, when to expect what, but if you're a beginning gardener just like me, this is your time to learn, so you may as well plan in advance as much as you can. And what's nice about this is that I can just use this next year for gardening and adjust it slightly by everything that I'm learning this year. Oh no, in our area, carrots take roughly this long to mature, or pumpkins matured so much quicker because of this, you know? And I can tweak my dates and my maturity times roughly to fix that for the following years to come. So it is so worth it to have a plan, watch what's the same or different in your gardening season, and then be more prepared for next year even. I love that Roots and Refuge Farm always says that the garden is like a classroom, and it truly is. Even for people who have gardened for many years, I always hear them say, oh, still learning. And God's creation is so much more than our minds can even actually figure out and comprehend in a season, and everyone's zones are different, and gardening temperatures and weather and soil, everything makes a difference. So study your garden, use each year as a classroom. And that is why I'm doing this planning, so that I can use it kind of like an experiment and learn from this year so that I can apply it better next year. So let's recap. We're going to make a list of all the crops that we're going to be growing in our garden this year. This is targeted primarily towards vegetables because flowers, you're just going to see the beauty and cut it and arrange it. But for vegetables, you can make a list on a spreadsheet of all the crops that you're growing this year. Put in brackets behind each crop roughly how many days it takes to mature. And then you want to note the start date that your area is saying that it's alright to start that crop. Count on as many days that it takes to mature, and then note your average or a rough date of when you can expect that crop to be ready. Once you have done this, You can start plotting in recipes that you already know, or start doing research into cookbooks that you can get from the library or blogs online. Pinterest is a great resource as well for a lot of recipes. And start putting together a little bit of an archive so that by the time those crops are ready, you already have an idea of what you could be doing with it, or last minute go pull it out of the garden and use it in a dinner. If you're really into this and you feel like this is going to be such a good help to you, it may also be worth it to start up a binder that is marked in alphabetical order, and you can just print recipes really easily and pop them into your binder so that you can flip to that crop that night and just have a recipe right there ready for you. Whatever system works for you, figure out a way that you can actually turn the food in your garden into actual food that you can use in your kitchen and preserve in some way. That way there won't be any loss, and you'll actually know how much you should be growing so that you don't have too much ready at once that you can't process quick enough in your kitchen. Alright, well thank you so much for joining me today. Stay tuned for the next video as we talk about the finale of how to actually start these seeds indoors or outdoors. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.